of the Northwest Mounted Police with Yukon King, swiftest and strongest lead dog breaking the trail in the relentless pursuit of lawbreakers in the wild days of the Yukon.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Jeff's Nonsport Card Universe, where we look at the history, evolution, and just plain fun of collecting non-sport cards. Well, the reason I'm smiling so much is that the Sergeant Preston of the Yukon television show was one of the most important parts of my young childhood. It was on every Saturday morning in reruns, and my friends and I absolutely couldn't wait to get up and see what the latest episode was going to bring. This is what the cards look like. They typically had Sergeant Preston and his faithful dog Yukon King chasing claim jumpers or robbers of fur trading posts or things like that. And it was a great, great show. So a little history is in order here because there are actually three sets to talk about, four sort of. All right, the first is Sergeant Preston of the Yukon first became popular in the 1930s on radio. And the exploits of Sergeant Preston of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police was so popular that in 1959, all those years later, Quaker Oats decided to come out first with the challenge of the Yukon Dog Cards. And of course, the best of all of them was the card of Yukon King, his faithful companion and helper in nabbing crooks. So he was so smart, it wasn't uncommon for Sergeant Preston to lean down on the dog and say to the dog, What is it, King? The crooks, they're down by a canoe. They're getting ready to go in the water. One's got on a checkered coat. They've stolen gold. Well, no, just about though. I mean, he was smarter than Lassie by a long shot. All right, so there were 36 dogs in the set in 1949, all geared to the radio program that was still going on. And they showed such vicious dogs of the Northwest, like the Doberman Pinscher, who definitely could help with pulling a bunch of sleds. This is the Great Dane. That's a great card. I love it. And then on the backs of these, you get, of course, a picture of Yukon King and information about the dogs. This one is the Boston Terrier. You also got the Saluki, the massive Saluki. Then you got dogs that were a little more tame, like the Otterhound. But then you had some really vicious dogs, too. And here's some of them right here. Take a look at these little critters who were vicious and could help track down criminals. Well, maybe not so much. Okay, so you could get a card with Quaker cereals, puffed wheat, puffed rice, just about puffed anything at the time. And the dog cards were so popular, Quaker Oats followed up with the Sergeant Preston of the Yukon cards. And that's what these look like. There were also 36 of these. They came in two series, A and B. Nothing real special about that. The first were 1 through 18, the rest were 19 through 36. But these also had great write-ups on the backs about the exploits of all of the characters. Now let me show you a few really quick. Here's King to the rescue. Of course, he saves a man from drowning. He did that practically all the time. Here's a prospector getting attacked by a giant grizzly bear. And as it says on the back of the card, this was not uncommon at all. I love this one. I'm actually going to read you the back of this. I'll show it to you first. But it's a man walking down the street with a stick with a stake on it, and he's being chased by dogs. And here's what it says. During the gold rush, a trip to the butcher's was an exciting event in the rough cities of the Yukon. Wrapping paper was a luxury. A prospector would take a long pointed stick and spear his piece of steak on the end of it. Then he would start home holding the meat high in the air above him to keep it away from dogs. Well, of course he did. Well, of course. And then it wasn't all dramatics. Log rolling contest, it says, were very popular with the miners. Here's a ne'er-do-well robbing a miner of his poke of gold. And then, of course, Sergeant Preston and King would be called in. Here's another crook holding up one of the fur trading posts. That happened a lot in the episodes. Here's the dreaded Caught in a Crevasse, where they would actually fall through the snow and have to be rescued by Yukon King. And his horse was named Rex, too. Avalanche. Look how exciting that is. Spearing salmon to get extra meat for supper. That's pretty cool. And then how about a wolverine coming into your shack to attack you? All right, these were fabulous. Very exciting. Kids absolutely loved them. Then in 1956, Sergeant Preston hit television. And when they hit television, Quaker Oats issued another set of cards, but they were the same cards. The only difference, and here it is, here's King and Sergeant Preston at the police headquarters. The only difference was it says at the top, Sergeant Preston of the Yukon on television every week. And that's basically the difference. So take a look at that, and then look at the back of one of the cards from the 1950 set. Other than the TV watching that goes along with it, they're pretty much the same. And the cards were the same. But kids had gotten older, gotten out of collecting, and then a new batch of kids came in. So we had that at the time as well. No, it wasn't just the cards. Quaker Oats had all kinds of premiums related to Sergeant Preston. If you saved enough box tops, you could send away for his action figure. Well, there wasn't much action unless you were actually doing it. And then my all-time favorite, this is great. If you send in enough box tops, you actually got a deed of land. You could own a chunk of land in the gold fields of the Yukon. And as it says on here, this is from the Big Inch Land Corporation. And it was called that because you actually got an inch of land. And yes, it legally was yours. It seriously was. Now, my good buddy Ron and I are both land barons because we both own a chunk of the Yukon thanks to the Quaker Oats premium. This is not us overlooking our property. But actually, the land today is not in a gold field. Ron tells me it's actually right in the middle of a golf course. So I think we should go up there and play through one of these days. After all, we are part owners of the course. All right, so quickly here to review. You have the Challenge of the Yukon Dog Cards that came out in 1949. You have the 1950 Sergeant Preston of the Yukon cards. Then you get the 1956, and the only difference in the 56 is basically watch us on television. All right, so that's Sergeant Preston of the Yukon. These cards are, well, let me show you. The first one, the number one in the set, I had it here a minute ago. Number one in the set is always tough, but it's brutal in this set. Basically, you're talking about $5 to $6 a card, just in average shape. They came with rounded corners, so that part is not that much of an issue. They're a little bit of thin stock, and they did come in the product, so they got soiled quite a lot. This one of my Otterhound, you can see it's got a nice chunk of Quaker Puff wheat or something on it, so they are a little bit tough to get. A set will cost you around $100 of any of these, basically. So we're not talking a huge amount of money. Now that's average condition. You'll pay more for graded cards or much better condition. Well, that's it for Sergeant Preston of the Yukon, so all I'll say is, on you, Huskies! Ha! Get up there! Enjoy your cards. Enjoy collecting. I'll talk to you next time.